The shuttle hummed softly as it docked at the massive space station, its small frame shaking slightly under the gravity controls. Humans were small and fragile compared to the towering aliens who ruled the galaxy, yet they carried an unshakable courage that could not be measured in muscle or size. Eli, the young human diplomat, stepped out first. His boots made soft thuds against the metallic floor, but each step seemed purposeful, calm, and confident. He held nothing in his hands but a small device for translation, and yet, somehow he radiated authority without needing to speak loudly. Around him, alien delegates stared. Some had 6 limbs, others had wings, scales, or glowing eyes that could see through walls. Their whispers filled the chamber, a cacophony of suspicion and curiosity. Commander Jorath, the Dravixian ambassador, loomed over Eli, his scaly skin reflecting the dim lights above. "Humans," he hissed, his voice like scraping stone, "cannot be reasoned with. They are reckless, unpredictable. Do not let their small size fool you. They are dangerous in their chaos." Eli's lips curved into a gentle smile. He did not argue. He did not shout. He only looked up at Jorath, meeting his piercing gaze with a quiet steadiness. There was a softness in his eyes, but also a strength that the alien could not ignore. Something about humans was always underestimated, and Eli knew it. The galaxy had seen humans fight wars with bare hands, survive storms that would destroy machines, and hold hope where all seemed lost. And now, in this grand council filled with beings who valued power above all, he intended to show them another kind of strength. The shuttle's ramp hissed as more humans emerged, diplomats, scientists, and observers. They moved calmly, speaking quietly to one another, their voices gentle but firm. There was no panic, no fear, only determination. The aliens recoiled at first, some muttering warnings to each other. They had never seen creatures who looked so fragile act with such self-possession. Inside the grand hall, the chamber was massive. Towering pillars stretched toward a ceiling that shimmered with holographic stars, and dozens of alien species crowded into seats arranged in circles. Each species had its own culture, its own way of communicating. Some used sound, some light, some pheromones, and others even telepathy. The humans, unable to communicate in any of these ways naturally, relied entirely on their soft voices and gestures. Eli walked toward the center of the chamber. His heart beat calmly, but beneath that calm was the awareness of the tension in the room. Thousands of eyes, some glowing, some slit, some multifaceted, watched his every step. Some stared with curiosity, others with doubt, and a few with open hostility. The humans had been warned. Even the smallest misstep could spark a war. Even a word spoken in the wrong tone could cause chaos. But Eli did not fear. He had learned something important about his species. The human way was not to dominate through fear, but to influence through understanding. Jorath followed, his massive form casting a shadow over Eli. "Remember," he hissed, "one wrong move and we will be humiliated. Do not let them see weakness." Eli nodded, his gaze lifting toward the crowd. He did not see monsters or threats. He saw individuals, beings like him in the simplest sense, beings who could feel, who could be reasoned with, who could understand truth if it was spoken clearly and sincerely. A hush fell as Eli reached the center. He opened his mouth, and his voice was soft, almost like a murmur. "We come in peace," he said. "We come to learn and to share. We are small, yes, but we carry hope, we carry courage. We carry the belief that life, all life, is precious." The words were almost lost in the murmurs of the room, yet they carried a weight that none of the aliens expected. Whispers quieted, and eyes blinked in surprise. Humans were not supposed to command attention without force. Humans were not supposed to hold presence in the face of overwhelming alien authority. And yet, here he stood, calm and gentle, making the room pause. Eli's gaze swept over the council, soft but unwavering. "We do not seek to conquer," he said. "We do not seek to control. We seek to understand. And in understanding, we can find ways to protect, to grow, and to create a future together." For the first time, some of the delegates hesitated. They had expected arrogance, or fear, or begging. They had not expected sincerity. And in that moment, the tiniest, simplest human gesture, the soft murmur of truth, made the strongest beings in the galaxy take notice. And thus, the arrival of the humans was not just a step onto a space station. It was a ripple in the galaxy, the first sign that even the smallest voice could stir the hearts of the mighty. The chamber was alive with motion. Tentacles waved. Wings fluttered, and eyes of every shape and size focused on the humans. Eli felt the weight of all those gazes, yet he stood straight, calm, and unshakable. He could feel tension in the air like static electricity. The delegates had expected fear, and in that expectation, they had prepared themselves to look down on the humans. But Eli did not falter. He knew that fear could not win respect, and aggression could never build trust. He took a slow step forward. His voice was quiet, soft like a breeze, but carried through the chamber by the humans' innate confidence. "We are here to speak," Eli said, "not to dominate, not to threaten, not to take what is not offered. We are here to listen as much as to share." Some delegates snickered. A four-armed creature with silver scales clicked its mandibles sharply. "Listen," it said. "You think you can teach us listening? You are weak. You cannot even survive a single storm without your machines." Eli's lips curled into a small, gentle smile. He did not argue. He did not defend. He only looked at the creature with patience, as if the words were not meant to hurt him, but to reveal fear in its speaker. He understood something the alien did not. Strength is not measured in survival alone. It is measured in courage, in persistence, and in the ability to stand calm when everyone else shouts. He continued, voice steady and soft. "We have faced storms bigger than machines, challenges larger than armies, and moments where everything seemed lost. And yet, we have always survived, not because we are the strongest, but because we never stop caring, never stop trying, never stop believing that life itself is worth protecting." The chamber's noise began to fade slightly. A few delegates lowered their wings. A few tentacles switched uncertainly. The silver-scaled creature blinked, unprepared for such honesty in the smallest of beings. Humans were supposed to be brash, loud, or foolish. They were not supposed to speak with such calm authority. Eli's eyes moved slowly from delegate to delegate. He did not rush, did not demand attention, but gave it freely. "We do not come seeking war. We do not come seeking domination. We come seeking understanding. We believe that every life matters, that every voice matters, that even when we are small, we have the power to create change." The alien whispers in the room grew quieter. Some tried to argue, but their words sounded hollow. None of them could match the sincerity in Eli's tone, the steady certainty that poured from him without effort. For the first time, the delegates realized that humans did not measure power the same way they did. They did not rely on strength or fear. They relied on truth, empathy, and perseverance. Then came the voice of authority. Archon Vale, the largest and most feared delegate, rose from his seat. His many eyes focused sharply on Eli, and his voice thundered across the hall. "You are nothing but fragile creatures. You cannot bend a world to your will. How can you claim respect when you are weak? When you are soft?" Eli did not flinch. He took a small step forward, his voice lowering almost to a whisper. "Because," he said, "softness is not weakness. Softness allows us to see the pain of others, to understand, to care. It allows us to protect even when it costs us. True strength is measured not by what we destroy, but by what we preserve." A strange silence followed. Not complete, but noticeable. The delegates had expected defiance or arrogance, not this calm, quiet courage. Some shifted uneasily. Others paused mid-gesture. Even Archon Vale, used to commanding entire fleets, found himself unsettled by the confidence of this human. Eli continued, his voice soft and melodic in its steadiness. "We do not need to dominate. We do not need to shout or roar. We do not need to terrify others to be heard. But we will be heard because what we say comes from truth, from care, from courage that refuses to be silent." For the first time, there was hesitation in the room. The aliens were uncertain how to respond to a species so different from their own. They had been taught to respect power, to fear aggression, and to dismiss the weak. But humans, these small, fragile humans, stood without aggression, and yet demanded attention simply by being truthful, by standing firm in their calmness. Eli took one more slow step, allowing his eyes to meet as many delegates as possible. "We are here," he murmured, "to find understanding, to protect life, to remember what truly matters. And if you listen carefully, even the smallest voice can change the course of many." Whispers softened, wings stopped fluttering, tentacles ceased waving. The room was not yet silent, but the first cracks of attention had appeared. The humans had not shouted, not demanded, not threatened. They had only spoken softly, with courage and care. And that, more than any weapon, was beginning to stir the hearts of the mighty. The chamber had grown quiet, but the quiet was uneasy. Eyes of every shape and size were fixed on Eli, the human diplomat who stood unshaken. Some tentacles twitched nervously, wings paused mid-flap, and even the normally roaring Archon Vale's multiple eyes blinked in unexpected uncertainty. Eli felt the weight of all those gazes, but he did not flinch. He knew the next moments would be critical. Words alone had already made an impact, but he needed patience now, patience and truth. Eli's voice was still soft, almost a whisper, but it carried a quiet power. We have traveled across the stars to be here. We have faced dangers no machine can predict and storms no armor can withstand. Yet here we are. Not because we are invincible, but because we never give up. We never stop caring. And that is how life continues, how hope continues, how peace becomes possible. A massive creature with 6 shimmering arms hissed sharply, its eyes narrowing. You speak of hope and care, it said. But hope cannot stop armies. Care cannot halt conquest. You humans are weak. You are too soft to survive this galaxy. Eli looked at the creature steadily. His calm gaze held no fear, only understanding. You may call us weak, he murmured, because we do not measure strength the same way you do. Strength is not just power or domination. Strength is the courage to stand when everyone doubts you. Strength is the willingness to protect life, even when it costs everything. Strength is knowing that every being, no matter how small, matters. The alien delegate recoiled slightly. No one had spoken like that before. No one had questioned their definition of power with such quiet certainty. Whispers began circulating through the chamber. Some voices were skeptical, some curious. The humans were defying every expectation. They were supposed to be small, fragile, and easily dismissed. And yet, here they were, commanding attention without weapons. Without threats, without anger, only words. Soft but powerful, Archon Vale rose fully to his imposing height, his many eyes narrowing dangerously. Words do not build fleets, he said, his voice shaking the chamber's air. Words do not defend worlds. You speak of care and courage, but where is your proof? What have you done to show that your soft words mean anything? Eli took a slow, deliberate step forward. His presence did not dominate the room by size, but by calm. Proof is not always in destruction or fear, he said. Proof is in what we protect. Proof is in what we choose to preserve when all others would abandon it. Proof is in hope, even when the universe tells you there is none. We have protected life. We have stood for truth. And we will continue to do so, not because it is easy, but because it is right. The room shifted again. Some delegates lowered their wings slightly. Others blinked multiple times, trying to process the soft-spoken words of a human who refused to bow, refuse, or fight back. There was a strange tension, part fear, part curiosity, part awe. Eli did not need to raise his voice. He only needed to speak the truth, clearly and calmly, and the aliens could not ignore it. A smaller creature with translucent skin floated forward, its voice trembling. You speak of hope and protection, but we have known only war and conquest. Why should we believe you? Why should we listen to a species so small, so fragile? Eli knelt slightly, not out of submission, but to meet its gaze on equal ground. Because fragility is not weakness, he said softly. Even the smallest thing can change the world. Even the quietest voice can stop a war. Even a single life, treated with care, can ripple across galaxies. We are human. We have been underestimated many times. And yet, here we are, proof that even the smallest can endure. Even the gentlest can inspire, even the weakest can make a difference. A silence fell over the chamber. It was not complete, but it was deep. Even Archon Vale paused mid-gesture. The aliens had come expecting a display of fear or aggression. They had expected chaos, rebellion, or pleading. But instead, they had found quiet courage, gentle confidence, and words that demanded attention without demanding obedience. Eli straightened, his eyes sweeping across the room. We do not seek to conquer. We do not seek to rule. We only seek understanding. If you truly listen, you may hear the strength in silence, the power in gentleness, and the courage in a heart that refuses to give in to fear. The murmurs softened further. Wings stopped flapping. Tentacles stilled. Eyes focused not in threat, but in curiosity. The humans were not loud, they were not flashy. But they had begun something far greater than any weapon could. They had begun to change hearts. And in that tense, charged silence, Eli knew the true work was only beginning. The aliens had noticed, yes, but could they believe? Could they let themselves be touched by the quiet strength of a single human? That was the real challenge, one he was willing to face. The chamber trembled as Archon Vale rose fully, his massive frame casting shadows over the smaller delegates. His many eyes glinted with anger and disbelief. Enough! He thundered. I will not tolerate this nonsense. You speak softly, human, but words are worthless if they cannot bend reality. Where is your strength? Where is your power? How can you even hope to make an impact in a galaxy built on conquest and domination? Eli did not flinch. His voice remained soft, calm, but every word carried a weight the chamber could not ignore. Strength, he said gently, is not measured by how many worlds you conquer or how many beings bow to you. Strength is measured by what you protect, by what you cherish even when the universe wants you to destroy it, by the courage to act rightly when no one else will. A ripple of tension ran through the chamber. The delegates shifted uneasily. Some muttered under their breath. Others exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to respond to a species that spoke without fear yet held no weapons. Ayla's quiet confidence was unlike anything they had ever seen. Humans were expected to be fragile, loud, or foolish. They were not expected to confront the most powerful being in the galaxy with only words and still command attention. You speak of courage, Vale roared, his voice shaking the very air. But what proof do you have? What have you done to survive the void, the storms, the wars? Your species is small, fragile, and insignificant. Why should we listen to you? Eli stepped forward, slow and deliberate. He did not shout, did not glare, did not even raise his hands. He simply looked straight into the Archon's many eyes, calm and unwavering. Because, he said softly, we have faced the impossible. We have survived when machines failed, when armies fell, when hope seemed gone. We have faced loss, fear, and despair, and yet we continued. Not because we are the strongest, not because we are the fastest, not because we can destroy, but because we refuse to give up on life itself. Some of the smaller delegates began to murmur. The room was still tense, but curiosity was replacing fear. The words were simple, but they cut deeper than any weapon could. Even Archon Vale, used to commanding entire fleets and bending entire worlds to his will, felt a ripple of unease. This human did not threaten him. This human did not challenge him with force. He challenged him with something far more dangerous, quiet truth. Eli took another step, closing the distance without aggression. We do not come to dominate. We do not come to conquer. We do not need to prove ourselves through fear or war. But we do prove ourselves through courage, the courage to speak what is right, to protect what is valuable, and to care even when others abandon hope. The chamber grew quieter. Wings stopped flapping. Tentacles stilled. Even the holographic screens dimmed slightly, as if the energy of the room had shifted. The alien delegates had expected noise, chaos, threats, maybe even fear. What they had not expected was calm. They had not expected a single voice, soft as a whisper, to hold the attention of all. Vale's voice dropped slightly, though his posture remained rigid. And you expect us to believe that softness can save anything? That gentleness can change the course of the galaxy? Eli nodded slowly, eyes filled with a quiet fire. Yes, because true power does not come from fear or domination. True power comes from protecting, from caring, from standing firm when all else collapses. Even the smallest voice can ripple across worlds. Even the gentlest heart can inspire armies. Even the weakest life can create change beyond measure. We are human. We have been underestimated many times, and yet here we are, standing. A hush fell across the chamber. The air felt heavier, charged with disbelief, awe, and something new respect. The delegates realized that this human was not weak. He was not fragile in the way they had assumed. He was powerful in a way they could not yet measure. Powerful without weapons, without fleets. Without threats, powerful because he held truth, courage, and compassion. Eli took a final step forward and lowered his head slightly. Not as submission, but as an offer of understanding. His voice dropped to the softest tone, barely more than a murmur. We are here to speak, to listen, to protect life. We are here to remind you that every being matters. That every voice matters. That even in silence, strength exists. And sometimes, the quietest voice can change the hearts of the mightiest. The chamber was still, completely still for the first time in centuries. The murmurs of doubt and defiance had vanished. Every eye, every limb, every wing, every flickering light paused in a shared realization. This human, so soft-spoken, so small, had not only spoken truth, but had begun to awaken something within the galaxy that even power could not command: hope, empathy, and respect. And in that silence, Eli knew he had reached the turning point. The aliens had heard him, felt the weight of his words, and could no longer dismiss the humans as weak. The real challenge, convincing them to act on this truth, was just beginning. For the first time, the chamber was quiet, not the uneasy silence of waiting, but a deeper, heavier silence. The delegates' eyes were fixed on Eli, the human whose soft voice had managed to stop even the thunder of Archon Vale. Some of the aliens exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable, as if they were trying to understand what had just happened. The small human had done something no one had thought possible. He had commanded attention without raising his voice, without displaying weapons, without threatening anyone. Eli took a slow, steady breath. His gaze moved across the council, soft but unwavering. "I know," he murmured, "that many of you have lived in fear, have fought wars, and have felt pain that seems endless. We have too. But it is in how we face that fear, how we respond to that pain, that true courage is measured." Some delegates shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if his words had reached them in a place they had long forgotten. A crystalline creature floated forward, its light flickering nervously. "You speak of courage, of care," it said. "But how can we trust that your species truly understands our struggles? You are small. You are fragile. You cannot endure what we endure." Eli's lips curled into a gentle, almost sad smile. "Perhaps we are small," he said softly, "and perhaps we are fragile. But fragility is not weakness. Fragility means we value life, because we know how easily it can be lost. Fragility means we have empathy, because we know what it is to feel pain. And fragility means we fight, not for dominance, but for protection. That is what makes humans strong. That is what gives us power, even if it is quiet." The room seemed to shift. Tentacles lowered. Wings paused mid-flap. Even Archon Vale, who had always ruled through fear, blinked in surprise. The human's words were not empty, they were measured, sincere, and impossible to ignore. For the first time, the aliens realized that power could exist without violence, that courage could exist without conquest, that strength could exist in gentleness. A small, amphibious delegate spoke next, its voice trembling. "If what you say is true, if the smallest can have strength, if the quiet can have power, then what does that mean for us? What does it mean for the galaxy?" Eli knelt slightly, not in submission, but to meet the delegate's gaze. "It means," he murmured, "that change is always possible. It means that even when everything seems lost, even when fear and anger dominate, hope can still grow. One voice, one choice, one act of care can ripple across worlds. Every life matters, and every choice matters. Even the smallest, quietest action can change the future." A hush fell over the council. No one spoke. Wings stopped moving. Tentacles stilled. Even the holographic light seemed dimmer, as if the energy of the room had shifted to match the gravity of Eli's words. The delegates had expected conflict, shouting, threats, and fear. Instead, they had encountered a soft-spoken human who had stopped them all, not with power, but with truth. Eli stood again, his eyes scanning the room with quiet intensity. "We do not seek to impose our will," he said. "We do not seek to dominate or destroy. We seek understanding. We seek protection of what is valuable. And we seek to remind you that even the smallest life, even the gentlest voice, even the quietest heart, can carry power that echoes far beyond its size." A murmur rose, small and hesitant at first. One delegate spoke, then another. They were not angry words, they were questions, reflections, doubts, and curiosity. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with a new energy, recognition. The aliens were beginning to hear what humans had long known. Power was not always measured in weapons or fleets. True power came from courage, empathy, and the willingness to stand firm in truth. Archon Vale's voice was quieter now, measured, unsure. "Perhaps there is a lesson here. Perhaps strength is not only what I have believed it to be." Eli nodded slightly, his expression gentle. "Strength is many things. Sometimes it is war. Sometimes it is peace. But always, it is what we do to protect life and what we cherish. And even the quietest voice can awaken understanding where anger and pride cannot." The chamber fell silent once more, but it was different now. It was not tense, not fearful. It was the silence of realization, of reflection, of hearts slowly opening to the idea that a single human, speaking softly, could begin to change the course of the galaxy. And in that silence, Eli knew that the first seeds of hope had been planted. The hardest part had passed, the hardest part was to be heard. Now came the real challenge, to be understood, and to inspire action that could ripple across the stars. The chamber remained still, but the air had changed. The uneasy tension that had filled the room was now replaced by curiosity and reflection. Delegates whispered softly among themselves, debating what they had just witnessed. The words of the human diplomat, Eli, had carried further than any weapon or command could. They had spoken not with force, but with truth, and now the council could not ignore it. Eli stepped forward, his posture calm and gentle, his voice soft yet steady. "I know many of you have been taught that power is fear, that strength is domination, that only the loudest voice is heard," he said. "But there is another way. Strength can be quiet. Power can be gentle. Courage can exist in softness. And change can begin with just one voice." A crystalline delegate floated closer, its shimmering surface catching the light. Its voice was hesitant but curious. "You speak as though the smallest can influence the largest. As though one life can change the course of history. Do you truly believe this, human?" Eli nodded. "I do. We humans have been underestimated for centuries. We are small. We are fragile. We are not fast or strong compared to many species. And yet we endure. We inspire. We act when others hesitate. That is how the smallest can ripple across worlds. That is how one voice can awaken understanding in thousands of hearts." The murmurings among the council grew. Some delegates looked at each other, unsure whether to dismiss the words or take them seriously. Tentacles switched with curiosity rather than hostility. Wings folded, and even Archon, the most feared being in the galaxy, lowered his towering form slightly. He had come expecting defiance, weakness, or fear from a human. Instead, he found courage, clarity, and an unshakable gentleness that demanded attention. Eli continued, his voice soft but firm. "We do not wish to control. We do not wish to dominate. We do not wish to take life from others. We come to protect, to understand, to cherish what is valuable. And in doing so, we discover that even the smallest action, the softest word, can carry a strength greater than any weapon, greater than any army." A small, amphibious delegate with translucent skin floated forward. Its voice was trembling, but its eyes shone with a new understanding. "Perhaps we have been wrong. Perhaps we have measured power in the wrong ways. Perhaps courage does not always roar." Eli's lips curved into a faint, warm smile. "Courage does not always roar," he agreed. "Sometimes courage is quiet. Sometimes it is gentle. Sometimes it is standing firm in truth when the world expects you to bow. And that quiet courage, it can inspire others, change minds, and even bring peace where war once ruled." Whispers of agreement began to ripple across the room. Some delegates who had been skeptical now nodded slowly. Others leaned forward, listening more carefully than ever. Wings unfolded to full span again. But not in aggression, rather, they moved with thoughtfulness. Tentacles tapped lightly, as if feeling the weight of Eli's words. The chamber, once filled with chaos and defiance, was now filled with consideration and possibility. Even Archon's many eyes softened slightly, the harsh lines of his form relaxing. He had ruled countless worlds through fear and power, but now he realized there was something else at play. Humans, small and fragile as they were, carried a strength beyond domination, a strength that came from care, understanding, and truth. Eli took a final step forward, lowering his gaze slightly, not in submission, but in respect. "We do not seek praise," he murmured. "We only seek understanding. And when understanding begins, hearts open. When hearts open, change becomes possible. When change becomes possible, hope spreads, and hope is the most powerful force in the universe." The council remained silent, but the silence had changed. It was no longer tense or uncertain. It was the silence of reflection, of minds slowly opening to new possibilities. The aliens had begun to see that strength was not only measured in fleets, armies, or fear. True strength could come from compassion, courage, and the willingness to protect life even when the odds seemed impossible. Eli's soft voice had done what no weapon could. It had begun to reshape the hearts and minds of the galaxy's most powerful beings. And in that moment, he realized that the real work had begun. The humans had been heard. Now it was time for the galaxy to act on what it had felt. For the first time in centuries, the chamber seemed alive with possibility. And all of it had begun because a single human had spoken softly, and the entire room had listened.